Is the cooling off period that has been proposed a good idea? Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is the Vancouver Life Real Estate Podcast and YouTube channel. And today, Ryan and I are discussing the recently legislated cooling off period. So what just happened is BC government introduced legislation just here on March 28th. It's called or known as Bill 12-2022 to allow for the creation of a cooling off period that will allow buyers to back out of a purchase after signing a contract of purchase and sale. In the official announcement, the Minister of Finance, Selena Robinson, said the government will put the legislation in place for the home buyer protection period by around summer of 2022. So this legislation, kind of falls on the heels of a red hot real estate market that's been going for about 2 years now, where they discovered about 70% of offers made in the last 2 years were done subject free. What this means, of course, there's no contingencies in place, and that if the offer is accepted, the deal is essentially firm right there. What it doesn't point out here is how many issues there were after the fact. They're trying to protect buyers, but there's no numbers here that we've been able to find that talks about, how many buyers actually bought homes that had substantial issues, or maybe they could not receive financing after the fact. But we'll dig into that. No surprise, details at this point are vague at best. But we wanted to share our thoughts on what we know so far. And I think the amendment, I'll just read it verbatim to you so you know what we are working with here. Word for word, a purchaser of residential real property may rescind the contract of purchase and sale for the property by serving written notice of the rescission on the seller within the prescribed number of days after the date that the acceptance of the offer was signed. That's the whole proposed amendment. Okay, obviously they said they're going to, fill in the blanks a little bit later and define this thing. Okay, that's fine. This is how this is done. But there are a couple of other notes within this regulation that we want to touch on as well, the three most important ones. First one, note A, respecting waivers of the right of rescission and the circumstances in which that may or may not be waived. Okay, so they're creating, a proposed amendment that potentially can just be waived. So you're creating something that will then become moot. Okay, we'll see how that pans out.
So stupid.
Number two, respecting an amount to be paid by the purchaser to the seller if the purchaser exercises the right of rescission, meaning there may be some kind of penalty if the buyer doesn't go through with that contract. Yet to be defined, of course, but interesting that they put that in there. And we'll get into why as well. I kind of understand why that's in place. And the last one, respecting the timing of the payment of the deposit under a contract of purchase and sale, despite any provision of the contract to the contrary.
That sounds really quite confusing to me.
Yeah.
And honestly speaking, don't we already have that in
Exactly. Well, yeah, we can touch on that in a bit. So again, this amendment was created by the Minister of Finance, not the Minister of Housing, the Minister of Finance. Now, granted, she was the Minister of Housing up until I believe it was 2020, so she does have some understanding, but interesting that this policy for housing is coming from the Minister of Finance. Okay, so a few things that we want to touch on first. We know in a hot housing market, the government loves to interject and kind of poke their fingers in their pie, if you will. And this is interesting. People have been screaming about high prices and affordability for many, many years, a lot more than just the last two. It became really, really front and center, at least around 2015, 16, 17, at sort of the last really crazy bull run. And when we saw price appreciation acting similar to what it's done in the last 2 years. Now, this bill, this amendment to the bill, while it's called a cooling off period, which I think is very clever of them, it has nothing to do with affordability. And Robinson, the creator of this, even said straight up, the intent of this is not to address housing affordability directly. So while, again, they're doing something, It has nothing to do with affordability. Yet, you may ask the average person what they think of this, and because it's called a cooling off period, it sounds like you're cooling off a hot market, so they're probably for it. Ryan, let's hear some of your initial thoughts here.
Well, I'm gonna try and be kind because I guess at the end of the day, they're trying to make what is a already difficult situation a bit better for buyers. But when you don't consult industry, and you just kind of start rattling things off, um, first of all, this is like this is what big government looks like, right? I think we need to state that if you actually brought in rules and regulations that were inside of industry, you would keep a lot of the competitiveness. That's competition. It also makes things a bit more fair, as long as the rules are right, right? And this is gonna, I think it's gonna have the opposite effect. I mean, let's first of all talk about the timing, right? They're introducing this bill now after the second interest rate hike, which will be on April 13th, right? At which point you're already going to be cooling off the market in the most effective way by raising interest rates, right? Adding a whole new element to the purchasing process after 2 years of going through this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It just doesn't, like, where is this coming from and why now, right? Like we should have had this 8 months into interest rate drops. Should have been like, whoa, we're going to drop interest rates, and we're going to realize that this is going to push housing like crazy. So let's implement a bit of a rule change here so that we can try and control things. Instead, it's just coming. It's like this is the last guy to the party, and the party's over. It's not over, but it's changed dramatically. And now I just don't think, with interest rate hikes, we've got, mortgages, 5-year fixed mortgages near 4% now. That's going to have its own cooling off effect on buyers. Buyers aren't getting mortgages now for 1.5%. So that's going to change things dramatically. So, I mean, my first comment is I just don't understand the timing behind it, right? I really don't think it makes a lot of sense in terms of timing. And then I really think if we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it here, when you don't consult with industry and you start implementing things that are going to cause more mayhem, more disorganization, the first thought process in my mind is, okay, I'm a buyer. I can go out now and I can write offers on anything I want. And then I can just pull off, I'm going to write 10 offers this week, and I'm going to pull back maybe on all of them. I don't know. Right. So it's not very genuine from the buyer's perspective. And the seller now is put in a tremendous position of risk because they don't know when their home's going to sell. They don't know if their home's going to sell. They're probably going to get multiple offers now almost all the time. So now we've created, if you will, more competition, but it's like fake competition. I'm trying to understand how this helps things cool off, when in fact, I think it just causes more confusion and a bit more mayhem for people who are honest and genuine buyers, and honest and genuine sellers, right? I don't know, Dan, do I sound insane here? But it's just, to me, it sounds like it's going to end up confusing a whole ton of people, especially those who are really genuine.
Yeah, it likely will. And again, because it hasn't been thoroughly thought out yet or implemented, we don't know what ramifications are going to be on either side. And like you said, the first thing that I thought of too when this was brought forward was like, yeah, great. This lets my buyers offer on multiple properties in 1 week, just tie them up, and then they can just sit back and make their decision later. Yep. Which again, you increase competitiveness in the marketplace, which again is the exact opposite of cooling things off. It would make it hotter. Now, yes, if there is a financial penalty to that, okay, that may negate that, and they may be very serious about which ones they offer on or not. We don't know. We're dealing with a lot of vagaries here, but again, the first thing that people in the industry are going to do are find ways to circumvent, something that doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Again, off the top here, an independent poll was done to poll the general public and see what they thought. And 35% were in favor,
Yeah.
meaning 65, 2 out of 3 people said, no, this doesn't make sense. Okay. Um, but what is this thing for? Let's dig a little bit deeper. This thing is meant to protect home buyers. Okay, let's take housing pricing aside. This is meant to really protect home buyers from 2 things. One, not being able to perform an inspection and understand the condition of the property, and 2, to have time to obtain financing. Okay, well, if you have bought a home in the last 2 years, and if you worked with a decent or great agent, you are very aware that getting financing in place prior to an offer is fundamental and what you should be doing, and down to the specific property you're about to offer on. And 2, a pre-inspection should be done on a home that needs it. And both of these things are easy to do prior to making an offer.
Even before, like if anyone's worked with a decent agent, you're gonna get your pre-approval before you even start any of the process. How do you even know what you can afford to buy? Right? Let alone start going shopping. Like, I'm going to start all of a sudden putting offers down on $5 million houses and tying them up and knowing I can't buy them. Right? It's like, no, you've got to go into any kind of hot market. If you're expecting to get dealt with, the only people who are really going to get dealt with are those that are prepared to do a deal. Right? And that goes to exactly what Dan's talking about. That's knowing in advance how much I have, what can I pay, and what is the bank going to lend me at what rate? A good, honest, respectable individual who's trying to buy a home is going to want to know that information before getting involved in anything, right? You wouldn't buy a pair of shoes if you don't have the money for it in your bank account. The same thing applies for a house, right? And then to Dan's point, okay, home is listed on Monday. Client sees it maybe Monday night, gets emailed out to them. Tuesday, they go and take a look at it. Hey, Ryan, I really like this home. What do I need to do to be prepared for this? Well, we should get an inspection prior to the offer day, which is 7 days from now or 6 days from now. So you call your inspector, you get them there on the weekend, or you get them there on a day that works for the sellers, right? At this point now, you've got an inspected property. You're already pre-approved. So that listing will go to your mortgage broker, and you've knocked off, yes, you can buy this. Yes, the bank will loan on this. And 2, you've done your pre-inspection, so we know if the home's got major issues. So you're either going to walk before the offer date, or you're going to get prepared to make a serious offer. And you've already done the due diligence.
On top of that too, if it's a stratified property, the documents have been reviewed, you know exactly what's been happening within strata, you've read the depreciation report, we've pointed out anything of concern, what to expect moving forward, what work is going to be done, etc. And on top of that too, when we're talking about financing, you're looking at a listing at 1.2. Well, we have gone, or your great agent has gone and actually done a market evaluation. We've talked to the listing agent about how much interest there is on the property. And then we've gone to your lender and said, we think this property is going to sell for 1.425. Can the building appraise at that? Or can the unit appraise at that? Can our buyer afford that? So we've gone in and we already know basically our top number, our walkaway number, and the bank has cleared them and said, yeah, 1.425, they are good to go at that number. Doesn't mean we're going to go that high, but we know the ceiling price that we can work with. All done before it's even hit offer day. So what are we saying here? We're saying here that, yes, we are all for protecting buyers, but you can do that in today's marketplace. Okay. If I'm sure we know there's horrible stories out there of people that were pressured either by what they felt was the marketplace, or maybe a less experienced agent who said, you got to go subject free or you're not winning. True. But maybe they went in, did zero due diligence, made that offer and found out there's foundation cracks or something horrific to that level. And yes, now they, the buyer, are on the hook for potentially 6-figure repair costs. Okay. That sucks, but that's not working with a professional in our opinion. So again, who you're protecting. If an agent can just offer on anything and then sit back and let the diligence happen afterwards, sure, the buyer is protected. But again, you're basically protecting lazy agents as well.
And if I can, Dan, I actually think it'll backfire, because I think it'll go the complete opposite way. If that's the approach that you take, then imagine if I'm a high producing agent and you're a low producing agent, which is fine. They exist in the marketplace, right? But if I'm going into competition against said agent and I know the listing realtor because I've got a working relationship with them, and they create an offer and it's better than mine, but they're not going to take it. They're going to take my offer because they know my offer is going to close, because my relationship with that realtor is so much stronger, right? And it's also going to come down to me saying to them, look, they got to go through their pre-approval process. They don't even know if they can buy this. My guy does.
Yeah.
And it's just going to create more mayhem, and it's going to put an emphasis on the stronger agents, which is going to make it harder for those who are trying to get into the industry as well. Right.
Very valid point.
I don't think it helps at all.
Okay. So the sort of right of rescission that they're talking about, it does already exist in the pre-sale world. And this is kind of interesting when you look at it, because they're sort of modeling this rescission idea based on what's happening in pre-sales. And the difference is, okay, they want the 7-day right of rescission, the cooling off period. We don't know how long it's going to be yet, but they want to create that so people have time to get financing. In pre-sales, well, yes, you can, as of recently, get pre-approved with a hold for 3 to maybe even 4 years. A lot of buildings are 5 to 7 or plus years out, meaning financing, you can't get pre-approved for that. So that doesn't exist. And inspection, well, you can't expect something that's not built. So they're modeling it off of that, which I find a little bit interesting. And let's look at that. If a developer has a building going up and it's 250 units, and they have their on sale and they're selling and some people rescind, well, they've got 4 more years to sell that unit. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really hurt the developer as much as it will a seller who's maybe already bought their house. They're firm. And now they're going to sell. And now they've got this cooling off period. They don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it's a flaky buyer. Maybe they haven't been pre-approved. And all of a sudden, oh, well, we can't get it. So now they have to go again. They have to go back on sale, go to the next buyer. And then they have another cooling off period. This domino effect may seriously affect the purchase of someone who's looking to sell and buy, which is the predominant amount of people within the marketplace.
Totally. And the other thing to consider here is developers also don't release all 250 units right away. They don't need to, right? So if they're building a 250 unit tower, they may release 100 units because that's what they need in order to get their financing to build, right? And we know, because we've done a lot of deals with pre-sale developers, they are coming to us prior to us writing anything, and they are saying, what is the likelihood of your client rescinding? Do they have their money in place? Do they know what they want to buy? Because if I'm going to offer them the contract, I'd rather they don't rescind. And who do you think gets the contracts? It's going to the relationships. So we know where this is going to go, right? And it's going to create more of an unfair situation again. And, like Dan said, if a developer, for the most part, here in Vancouver, they've either got hundreds of millions or they've got billions, right? And so your average seller who's trying to maybe sell their property so they can, maybe they've got another kid on the way and they want to buy a new home. Well, now this whole process becomes somewhat disingenuous for everybody involved. It really hurts. The seller is a new buyer, right? Just like a buyer becomes a seller at some point. So this creates an unfair balance, and it's going to get circumvented in many ways, and I think even to that point, the BC REA came out with 30 recommended policies. It was 57 pages long a month ago with recommendations that the government should take. Dan, you want to start maybe on some of those?
Yeah, think of the difference here. Minister of Finance comes out with one sentence without consulting the industry, and the industry's like, here's 57 pages with 30 well thought out ideas. They're just not talking to each other, right? So, but yeah, let's dive into what the Real Estate Association recommended, because again, Real Estate Association wants buyers protected too, obviously. Yeah. So A pre-offer period where offers can't be presented to a seller on new listings until the listings have been up for basically 5 to 7 days. Basically what we have now.
Mhm.
They don't have to, right? Some people we see homes sell on day one. Okay. But they're saying set a pre amount of time where people have time to get the due diligence performed. Great. Um,
Which
they,
which is kind of the direction regarding the presentation of offers already. It's just that's just the seller's discretion now,
that's right.
right? So
Um, they have a lot of supply side recommendations, but we don't need to get into that right now. This recommendation was fun. Provide local governments with training and best practices regarding real estate.
cheeky, cheeky,
Educate
cheeky.
them on what they are pushing down these amendments on without consulting them. They did, highlight a couple potential issues. And I think we've kind of touched on them. It can hurt honest sellers. If you are helping create an environment where buyers are more protected in the sense that there's maybe no ramifications to walk away, you're going to create more buyers. Like again, like I said, one buyer can now offer potentially 2, 3, 4, 20 homes in a week and tie them all up. We don't know yet, but again, it's kind of creating more buyers and more buyers. What else we got here? Of course, they talked again about restricting blind bidding. Somehow that's not in the current proposal, right? Blind bidding. Maybe that would have helped some people not overbid, which can happen, of course, but that's not discussed. They said make the PDS, the property disclosure statement, mandatory. Interesting one, could be further developed, but yeah, there's a lot of times where sellers, they just cross out this disclosure and buyers are left to, again, rely more on things like strata docs and or their inspection.
Mm-hmm.
This one I like. Make sure that if you have a listing, these strata documents are available day one.
Yay, that would be amazing.
Absolutely. Now you have time to review them in advance of an offer. Because right now what happens sometimes is strata docs aren't even available until or even after an offer deadline. Not helping any buyers there.
No.
Next one, better educate realtors. 100%.
All
You got
for
to think
that.
here. Yeah, of course we have to, because realtors can come out and in the first week, their wealthy friend wants to buy a $3 million home and they know enough to write an offer, but they maybe don't have the experience to perform and know that that diligence has to take place. That's not going to help their seller, or sorry, their buyer that they're representing. So of course, better education for agents is recommended. And big one here, consult the real estate board first.
Shock.
Talk to the industry about your ideas.
I mean, yeah, and we came up with some of our own ideas too.
Well, yeah, it's easy to shut down what exists here, but again, we have a couple ideas that shockingly I don't think were discussed. I couldn't find them. So here we go. Here is Dan and Ryan's ideas to protect buyers further as well. What about the idea of a one authorized pre-inspection that all buyers can have access to? Maybe it's paid for by the seller, maybe the listing agent, whatever, but it exists. And yes, I know there's all sorts of liability issues. Put that aside for a second and let's just think about solutions. One authorized pre-inspection that every buyer has access to.
Yeah, and that that inspector can be an independent inspector, right? So the real estate board would have to approve a set of inspectors who could do an independent review, right? And then you could make that mandatory for listing a property on MLS. You want to list a property? Sure, you can use our service, but put your pre-inspection up there with the PDS and the title, the contract, and then you can go to market. And at that point, people can look at things online and realize they don't even need to go and see the home. They can just decide based on the condition of the home and what's been disclosed, if that's even of interest to them, right?
That may even result in some homes not hitting the market.
Totally. Or getting fixed first.
Exactly. They might be like, oh, okay, let's not sell this. It has some issues. Let's fix them first and put better quality to market.
That's right. Yeah. Or you're disclosing the fact, hey, we know our roof is leaking. We know there's a foundation crack. We know there's material latent defects. And now that's on you to be okay with, right?
And you price it in accordingly.
That's right.
Protect the buyer. Okay. So that satisfies the inspection issue that they are raising here. Number two, what about a pre-appraisal? Again, authorized lender, financer, whoever, figure out the logistics later, but they have the appraisal done and say, cool, it doesn't matter what your list price is. This home's market value, the way a bank is going to look at it, it is worth X.
Mhm.
And then you can make a decision, what you're going to offer based on that. Now, getting pre-qualified, that's outside this. If you're not doing that, you need to do that first, of course. Okay. We're not talking about finding out after an offer if you can actually afford it. Oh, I haven't filed my taxes in 3 years. That's not the conversation. We're
Yeah.
protecting buyers on the valuation of a home so they don't have to cover the spread in cash.
Why are we not like protecting both buyers and sellers?
Because it's a seller's market.
But what about when it becomes not a seller's market?
Well, then you're going to see 40-year AMs and interest rates drop again.
Right. I mean, it's just, to me, it's I get it. I understand the difficulty of, people trying to buy homes, but I'm still lost as to how any of this really helps. I get why the government's doing it, but I don't know. If you change the game, if you change the rules of Catan, or you change the rules of Monopoly, expect people to exploit them as soon as they change too, right? Strategies are going to change. The rules are different. People are going to get hurt. And I just don't think this has been very well thought out. And I think it's more lip service, like you said at the start, Dan. I mean, if you look at the things that it won't do, which the biggest one is it's not going to lower any housing prices. It's not. I mean, that's the number one issue here. It's not. I mean, protecting buyers can be done with the right professional. I mean, if you go and hire a bad lawyer or a bad doctor, the same rules would apply to you there. You'd end up suing them or doing something for compensation. Realtors are protected in the same way, right? We carry insurance for that very reason. So, big government coming in here and trying to manipulate the rules of the game, for honestly, to make themselves look better and really provide no guidance or really no sort of detail. It's all scant, on detail and stuff like that. Doesn't the amendment's not going to help at this point, right?
That makes me think too, Ryan. It's a good point. It's very simple. The world can be approached with the phrase buyer beware.
Yep.
And really what I mean by that is, of course, if you're going to make $1 million decision, if you're going to make any major life decision, do some research.
Yeah.
Figure it out,
Totally.
Interview 5 realtors or 10 or whatever you feel comfortable with to find who fits you best and feels like a real professional. If you're going to get a major surgery or you're going to get something, I don't know, drastically changed within your life, that's a huge life and family decision, interview a few people, figure out who the real professionals are, spend the time so that you are protected.
Like when you're going to try and buy a used car, you call your buddy who knows everything about cars to come and look with you, right? Or if you don't have that buddy, you call someone who who can be trusted in that respect. And the same thing applies here, right? Like I'm not very good at choosing clothes, so I go with my wife's friends, right? It's the same thing. If I try and do it myself, I screw it up. So, if you're entering something that has professionals and professional designations around it because the industry demands that, then the due diligence and the buyer beware element, you got to respect it, and you got to go through the process. The process that we have will protect you. We've protected hundreds and hundreds of buyers over the last years doing the process that we talked about in this conversation. And they've been lucky to get homes, obviously, but they got them because they were competitive and prepared, and we did everything to mitigate their risk.
Yeah, it's another point. How many homes were looked at that the agent said walk away from because it's not good prior to offer day? That'd be an interesting stat as well.
I do that all the time.
Okay, guys. So that is our thoughts on the cooling off period amendment that's coming into play around summer. Again, it's not fully thought out yet, so we don't know what it looks like, but we know where it's trending. We know our thoughts that we shared, and you know what? We'd also love to hear yours. What do you think about this cooling off period? Please make some comments below. Email us. We always love hearing from you, and we will reply. So that's it for us this week. Thanks as always for watching and listening. We will be back next Saturday morning with a new episode. Next week, we are talking about the March stats and things are changing. Things are changing.
They are.
Interest rates, like Ryan said, hitting 4% right now. That is going to have impact, and we are starting to see it early. We're excited to bring you those numbers next week. Thanks again. Have an awesome day.